So I'm back in Ireland and I was reading a news story that was published last week was the closure of the Veritas bookstores in Ireland. And I think some people will remember this video that was published just before Easter back in 2021, just before Easter, the second Easter where we would not have Easter celebrations down here in the Republic. And this famous video was published just before our Easter celebrations back in 2021. I just want to remind people of what was published.
Hey, it's Father Jim Martin, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of my friends at Veritas in Ireland. They're carrying my new book, Learning to Pray. And I'm really a fan of Veritas. They do wonderful work. They have wonderful, all sorts of resources in terms of books and all sorts of things online. And they were super nice to me when I was visiting Ireland for the first time a year or two ago at the World Meeting of Families in Dublin. They made me feel right at home. Set up a book signing for me, and it was just great. They also gave me this beautiful Irish cross, which I still have. I'm half Irish.
Now, I love the faith. I love my church. I love the Catholic Church. And I love the Irish Church. And I'm not here to criticize. But I remember that video coming out in 2021. And I said, do they have a death wish on themselves? Because he is very polarizing. Father James Martin is very polarizing. And he hasn't brought together both sides with his what he does. On the one side, privately, he says, well, someday let's hope that the church will change its teachings. We have him on record saying this. And on the other side, he plays a very interesting game and he's polarizing. And so when Veritas, which is an arm of the Irish bishops, published that video in 2021, a lot of people just, they stopped buying from Veritas. I'm just relating an experience there. In fact, if you look at their accounts over the years, they've been steadily falling even before the pandemic. There has been a steady decline in sales, in book sales. I suppose what caught my eye last week was in The Independent, they ran a story regarding 400,000 euros that was pumped into Veritas to keep it afloat. And I thought to myself, gosh, that is really a lot of money to be pumping into a charity in reality to keep it afloat. And again, I feel sorry for the 80 employees. I feel sorry for those running the company and authors that have used it. I know it's publishing is a very, very difficult industry because some of my friends who are authors, they tell me about it. They get a pittance for what they get published unless you become a mega seller of books, maybe the Scott Hands of this world or something like that. And I mean, publishing is difficult, and Catholic publishing is even more difficult, and so forth. But I couldn't help think, gosh, that is really a lot of money to be pumping into keeping afloat Veritas. And I suppose I'm glad now that they've taken the decision to stop this loss-making charity from continuing, because at the end of the day, it's where is this money coming from? It's coming from ordinary Catholics around Ireland who support the church. But there's one thing that I wanted to pick up on, and maybe if someday there are more Catholic bookstores that open, that there will be actually Catholic bookstores that you'll go in there and say, wow, this is a beautiful bookstore. I've been to some great Catholic bookstores around the world. If you ever go to the Shrine of the Blessed Sacrament in Huntsville, Alabama, the shrine that Mother Angelica built, just before you go into the shrine to your right, she kind of built this little castle, replica castle, and in there's this massive bookstore. You go in there, you'd spend half an hour going through all the different books. I remember going to Le Barreau in France. They have a massive bookstore. There are some places you go to, not to mention obviously in other languages, if you can speak Spanish or Italian, there's many bookstores, and you could spend hours going through those bookstores, looking at books, especially in Rome. a place where I used to go to buy books was, I used to work in London, and beside Westminster Cathedral, to the right, there's this massive bookstore. I'm not, is it St. Paul or something? I'm not sure. If anybody that works in London, you'll be well familiar with that bookstore. And I think there's actually a second bookstore just as you go up on your right. There's a second bookstore, Catholic bookstore, not so big, there beside Westminster Cathedral. So you have these massive places. You have good Catholic content. In Ireland, for some reason, I don't live beside a Veritas store, so I live in Ballina, and the nearest bookstore that I have is Knock Shrine, and it's actually a good bookstore. If you ask them to get you something, they'll always get it. So, it's a good store, and you get a good variety of books, in there. It's the truth. They will sell you a traditional Latin Mass missal. They stock them. So, credit to where credit is due. It's a good bookstore. I do like it. But there are other Catholic shops where really we let ourselves down. And I just wanted to show you this clip that always springs to mind, something that you might find interesting. Just something I noticed regarding bookstores. I don't know if people know Belfast, but this is the St. Mary's Church, and there's a large Lourdes grotto just here. Great place to eat up in Belfast, and this is an old 2017 maps. The renovations are completed by now, so all this scaffolding is gone. But I always found it interesting when you're walking down this street in Belfast, you would come to this holy shop. So, it's a holy shop with all the devotional, the angels and statues and so forth. So this was the holy shop down here. And then you had St. Mary's. I'll just show you here. Can I get in here? St. Mary's. It's all the one, as far as I'm aware. St. Mary's Repository. Now, can I move in here? It's not letting me get in. It's not letting me... get in here, but it's just this whole holy shop here, which is right in front of St. Mary's, with all the devotional stuff, the angels and stuff, but very, very, very poor on books, on literature and Catholic literature for formation. Okay, people are kind of using it nearly as a superstitious location. I'll go and get, I don't know, a statue, and again, I've nothing against statues or anything like that, but it's not like they're really engaging their intellect in the faith by what we're presenting them with this shop. But what I found very, very interesting, if you go down this street, I'll go take you on a little tour down here to Belfast, just down here, is it down here? Yeah, there is a massive... and I've been here. And it's not the only bookstore in Belfast. You have a massive Faith Mission bookshop. It's a Protestant bookshop here in Belfast, full of books, full just literature bookstores. And it's not the only bookstore you have in Belfast. There is another one, a larger one. Different Protestant denominations, but replete, full of Christian books, especially on the Bible and so forth. And yet, as I could never find a Catholic version of this in Belfast. So a Catholic version of this type of bookstore, and seemingly, if I'm not mistaken, there are supposedly more Catholics in Belfast in some areas, but it's like, you ever go down the Falls Road, there wouldn't be a bookstore of this size in Belfast offering this amount of books. And again, that's not the only bookstore. So like, if you're interested in maybe learning Hebrew or learning the ancient languages of the Bible, learning how the Bible was, they have some good biblical resources. That's all I'm saying. Some Protestants have some good biblical resources, and you can use them as a Catholic, obviously kind of discerning, okay, well, what are these resources that are using them? But they have N.T. Wright, for example. N.T. Wright, you could read his books. very, very, very good, in-depth biblical studies. And yet, us Catholics, if we walk down here to St. Mary's down here, this is, and we're not engaging Protestants in a serious way when they pass here and say, okay, statues and rosaries and angels and more angels and all of this stuff. I mean, is this really where we're going as far as our Catholic bookstores are location? Now, it's not a Veritas bookstore, but do you get my gist? Anyway, so this is the experience that I've had in Ireland, and I will go into any bookstore. I love books. I just thought, out of curiosity, I would present some of the books that I've been reading. And I usually buy from Sophia Press, a very good bookstore, from Angelica Press. Going to give a plug, obviously, to Praying with the Heart, which I got in Angelica Press. Also, Roger Book, The Gentle Traditionalist, The Gentle Traditionalist Returns, and Cor Jesu Sacratissimo, Roger Book. He is published on Angelica Press, just giving a plug to him. Some of the books that I have found interesting. Last year, little exercise I was trying to do for a video on this channel was on Dom Columba Marmion. So last year was his 100th anniversary of his death. And his books are on sale in Knock bookstore. But I also travelled out to the abbey where he lived in Maritzau in Belgium, and just out of curiosity went to see their bookstore. And their bookstore, for example, isn't run by the monks. It's kind of outsourced, so it's lay run, but not a single book in English about Dom Columba Marmion or any of his writings. Now, I suppose, okay, it's in Belgium, and maybe very few Irish even bother going to visit the monastery where Dom Columba Marmion died. But I just thought it was very interesting. I did go to, I think they're connected to Glenstall Abbey in Ireland, and I did go to the Glenstall Abbey bookstore to try and find some books on Dom Columba Marmion. And again, the bookstore, as far as I'm aware, it was run by some staff there. It's not run by the monks, and I couldn't find any books on Dom Columba Marmion. That was last year as well. Now, maybe I didn't look hard enough, but it wasn't like you're walking into this great Catholic bookstore where you can go in and you can spend hours going through different literature. Do you know what I mean? Like, a good bookstore. It was very underwhelming. It was very sad in a way. I suppose it's just a suggestion. If you have a monastery, just offer the wealth of great Catholic literature. So, for example, in that monastery, Maritzau, there was a monk called Dom Pius de Heptine, and Senecal Press in County Meath, they have started republishing these books. They're also republishing Dom Hulbert van Zeller's books. So they're doing some work there. You can also self-publish. Who is it? Brian Nugent, he wrote a whole book on the Tuam babies, a whole historical book and he self-published himself, and you can buy his books on Amazon. Other books that I found very interesting, for example, Trent Horn's book, Why We're Catholic. Something that I love the American Catholic writers. They take time to, and anyway, Trent Horn, you can't go wrong with really the way he blogs. He really does feed people. He doesn't just talk about stuff. He gives you the meat and the bones of his arguments. He's very, very, very good at educating people. Really good educator in the face. So Trent Horn, Why We're Catholic. Karl Keating, Catholicism and Fundamentalism. The Fathers Know Best by Jimmy Akin. Some older saints. Who do I have here? I have the Catholic Controversy, The Defense of the Faith by St. Francis de Sales. These are some books that we need to be getting out. We need to be teaching the next generation. Peter Kreft, The Handbook of Catholic Apologetics. Theology and Sanctity by Sheed. F.J. Sheed. Very, very popular back in his day. Sadly, today, not very well known. C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity and the Great Divorce. My books are falling down as if you want to go down to the spiritual path, the spiritual canticle and poems of St. John the Cross, a massive author. But I have literally hundreds of books. I've brought hundreds of books, and I want to keep the collection together someday. And I've in different languages. And I would love to see a project in Ireland, maybe in Knock, where you would have an expanded bookstore, Catholic bookstore. And expanded. We go to Knock, and on the main street, there are so many shops full of the devotional side. Well, we need, and this is a suggestion a Protestant has given. We need a Catholic bookstore, full of resources on sacred scripture, full of resources on the lives of the saints. We need to feed people. We really do. And that's what you could do. I mean, you could set up a bookstore in Knock for €400,000. You could actually set up a bookstore in Knock for €100,000, the seed capital in there, and you would make a profit, feeding people. The other thing I've noted with Catholic books is they tend to be pretty expensive, compared to other books. But I suppose I can understand this because, the market is a massive. And what is the market of Irish Catholics that actually buy Catholic books when you're not talking about millions of people? But I just want to encourage people to don't give up in that space. I've seen some great Catholic stores and stuff like this, but we need to ramp it up. We need to ramp it up and renew the faith in a very positive way in Ireland. And that's my suggestion. Don't see it as defeat. See it as a challenge. As I said, Brian Nugent has been self-publishing for years, many Catholic books, which I find very interesting, especially all the work he did on Marian apparitions around Ireland. So there is ways, but I suppose I just thought when I saw people criticizing the closure, saying, "Oh, I always use this bookstore, and I did this and I did that." Well, look, if we don't use these things, we lose them. At the end of the day, without resources are going to be tight in the Irish Church for decades to come, and we need to focus on faith formation. We went through the Alive O faith formation program in primary schools, which was the best faith formation program in the world at forming kids not to be Catholic. I know that. I went through it, seen it. The forming kids not to be. I mean, it was the most dry and program I've ever seen. And then we moved on to another program called Grow in Love. We need to get faith formation out of books and out of schools and into our lives, into our families. Yes, books serve a purpose, but the best way to learn the faith is of somebody who lives and loves the faith. It's not. It shouldn't be a program. Okay, you're teaching maths, you're teaching Irish, you're spending a few minutes now on the faith, and the kids, all that they see is, oh, the faith is a subject. Horrible thing to have done to our children, to have converted the faith formation into a subject. and so that they view it through the lens of a subject. And it's all, and then they're left with this infantilized view of the faith. Get it out of schools. The faith is a lived experience. Pray. I would have given those 400,000 euros to Antoinette Moynihan, Children of the Eucharist. She will do more to form kids in the faith in Ireland than any woman will in this country, without a shadow of a doubt. Bringing children into that intimate contact with Christ, opening them up to learn how to pray. Teaching them how to who the Eucharist is in that setting, in that prayer setting, bringing faith formation into families. So much could be done. But anyway, look, it's just throwing some ideas out there. It's good that Veritas maybe is closing, because maybe something will come which will be far bigger. And Protestants might walk in there and say, well, these Catholics are serious. Instead of walking into some of our Catholic stores, bookstores, and always seeing half the store is devoted to devotional stuff, maybe they walk into a Catholic bookstore and say, well, these guys are serious about their faith. Look, they have a whole section on the Bible study, the languages of the Bible, it'll challenge people intellectually. That's where I'd love to see it to go. But anyway, sorry, this video went on a little bit longer, but I thought it was a topic that was dear to my heart, and I would hate to see Catholic bookstores closing, but I would really love to see a major centre, maybe in some of the monasteries around Ireland, maybe Glenstal, to have a destination in itself to go and to a bookstore. Maybe some of the Dominicans will be able to do this, and maybe it's already there and I don't know about it. And maybe somebody put a comment in, you're not aware of this place in Ireland or that place in Ireland. And well, maybe I wasn't, but I'm clued into all things Catholic, and I maybe not aware, but I would love to see a massive centre of Catholic learning in Ireland for us laity to go and experience. Because I see it in other places. I see it in the Spanish world. The Spanish world is massive. Massive because of the amount of Catholics who speak Spanish and the amount of Spanish Catholic literature. You could spend hours in Spanish Catholic bookstores and Catholic altars in that. They have a massive reach. Same with French and to a lesser extent Italian. But it'd be interesting, and Portuguese, but it'd be interesting to see if we could do something to that, because there is a massive English-speaking pool of books to bring it in, and to republish a lot of these authors that have long since not been published, so let's see. Anyway, God bless you. Take care. Bye bye.